My job is to become class. Okay.
Could the interpretation technician please do a quick audio, quick 10 count on the English channel? Could the interpretation team please do a 10 count on the English channel? Audio test for the meeting stream.
We're going to get started in about 1 minute. Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Just for the participants on Zoom, so you know, my camera's not functioning properly, so it's a bit of a white blur. It's not snowing here in committee chambers, but it looks like it, but I am here. Before we get started, I want to acknowledge that Ottawa is located on the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation, whose culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. We have no regrets to date, and I'll start by asking the committee coordinator to call the roll.
Councillor Brown.
Here.
Councillor Carr.
Present.
Councillor Desroches.
Here.
Councillor Hill.
Present.
Councillor Kavanagh.
Present.
Councillor King.
Here.
Councillor Lowe. Here. Councillor Plant.
Ici.
Councillor Troster.
Here.
Vice Chair Bradley.
Here.
Chair Dudas.
Ici.
You have quorum, Chair.
Merci beaucoup. Seeing no declarations of interest, we have the confirmation of the minutes from Tuesday, November 28th, 2023. Are these carried? Carried. We have a response to an inquiry, 4.1, Sustainability Fund Budget for 2024. Does anyone have any questions about that, or is that item received? Received. Item 5.1, Accountability Agreements with Ontario Health. We don't have any motions. There is no presentation from staff, although staff is here if anyone has any questions. Does anyone have any questions for this item, or is this item carried? Carried. (5.2) Centre d'accueil Champlain French designation request. We have no motions on this item. As I said, there is no presentation, but staff are here if there's any questions. Are there any questions on this item, or is this item carried? Carried. Item 6.1, status update, Community Services Committee inquiries and motions for the period ending February 9th, 2024. We have no presentations, no motions. Any questions? Is this item received? My goodness, we're going for a world record here. We have item 8.1. This is from Councillor Troster. It's poverty reduction initiatives for artists and cultural workers. Councillor Troster, did you want to speak to this item?
Sure. Thanks, everybody. This has been a lightning fast meeting, but I hope you'll indulge me for a few minutes. I'm very excited to bring this motion forward. Arts practitioners and culture workers are key members of our community. They contribute to economic development, social cohesion, civic engagement, tourism, and so much more in our city. And despite how important these members of our community are to the success of our city, and I hear people talking about the arts a lot when it comes to the revitalization of downtown Ottawa, arts practitioners and culture workers often live at or below the poverty line. We know that at least half of the artists in Ottawa live in poverty, with the median income being 49% below the median for all Ontario workers. We also know that cultural workers make 3% less than the median for all Ottawa workers, but they work in conditions that increase their chances of depression, anxiety, addiction, and sexual violence. If we don't work to improve the conditions for arts practitioners and culture workers, we may lose the strong sector we have in Ottawa. So it's crucial we work to make their conditions better before it's too late. So this is why I put forward a motion that seeks to incorporate anti-poverty initiatives for arts and culture workers into our funding framework. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Troster. Before we go to any questions, we do have a delegation. We have Velvet Wells, who I believe is online. Velvet, are you there?
I am.
There you are. You're
Good
welcome.
morning.
You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I won't take that time. I am here to heartily support the motion. Thank you, Councillor Troster. I represent who you're talking about. I am very much an artist, a performer, a creator. I was lauded by your Arts Council last year as such, and yet the reality is economically, I am not fighting an even playing field. So to have the support at the municipal level is so important. There are motions across many ages, but the senior artists especially are feeling a financial pinch more and more. And unfortunately, the support hasn't been there historically. So to have Ottawa take this initiative and to truly offer this support to us artists is thanked. I cede the rest of my time, or whatever the official phrase is.
Thank you so much, Velvet. We do have a question from Councillor Troster.
Hi, Velvet. Thanks for being here. I'm just curious, from your perspective, what kinds of anti-poverty initiatives do you think would be really helpful for the arts community? You did speak about senior artists. There is a wonderful organization called PAL Ottawa, which is actually setting up affordable housing for senior working artists, and I'm very excited that they will be on the Rochester Heights Phase 2 site in my ward, so I'm very excited to welcome them. But you mentioned artists as they age facing poverty. I'm just wondering if you could speak in a little bit more detail about that particular struggle for the arts community.
Sure. Thank you, Councillor. Absolutely, those initiatives are happening in the future, and we live in the present. The reality is that as we age, our seeming productivity, the reality is that ageism still exists in this society, so the opportunities aren't here as much as one might desire. So there is precarity in opportunity. I moved here from Toronto, and part of that move came as a result of the increasing cost of living, in terms of rental spaces. And when we landed here, things were okay, and then suddenly they started to escalate here as well. So it's productivity aside, opportunities like the housing, we need more of those. In terms of other things that could come to the fore, grants are nice, absolutely, but just having those opportunities, if there's a way that the municipality can have, I don't know if it's more festivals that are specific to the senior sector. I don't know if it's I don't know what that work looks like, because we haven't seen it to this point.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Thank you for everything you've contributed to arts and culture in the city. And I mean, the final thing that I'll say is, we're seeing a lot of displacement in neighborhoods, and often artists move into a neighborhood just before it gets gentrified. We've seen this happen all over the world, all over North America, where they come in, they create studio spaces, that helps make a neighborhood desirable, and then they're priced out of the neighborhood. There's at least one development in my ward that's going to be coming to planning committee soon, that yes, it's supporting our city's intensification goals, but it's also evicting and making homeless a whole number of artists that have live workspaces in that building and who will not be able to find a place to live that is comparable in Centertown or maybe even in the city. So I really want to thank you for coming, and I want to thank this committee for letting me highlight this issue, and I really look forward to seeing what staff comes up with in terms of potential anti-poverty initiatives within our arts funding framework. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Troster. Thank you very much, Velvet. I see you have one more question. So the question comes from, oh, it's just for comment. Well, Councillor King, you're free to comment.
Thank you so much, Chair. I just really wanted to thank Councillor Troster for moving this motion. I think it makes eminent sense to tie our poverty reduction strategy to the arts community. I remember reviewing statistics from Hill Strategies, a research consultancy that specializes in statistical analysis of the arts sector. That was released in 2022, so it re-jogged my memory. And some of the findings there are what you're outlining, especially some of the pandemic-induced changes that the art sector experienced, which included in the 2020 to 2021 timeframe, artists seeing a 15% decrease in total hours worked, which is a deeper decrease than the 9% decline for other workers during the period. Freelance artists were the worst hit during the depths of the pandemic. So we know in 2020 there was a 29% decrease in hours worked by self-employed artists, reaching the lowest levels on record. And I think one of the most discouraging stats is that in 2021, while the overall labor force eventually rebounded to pre-pandemic levels, this wasn't the case for self-employed artists. Hours worked by self-employed artists remained 12% lower in 2021 than in 2019, even though 2021 was a much better year than 2020. So I think it is important that we ensure that we look at how the poverty reduction strategy and especially financial strategies can be applied to artists and cultural workers. We know that artists and cultural workers provide so much to the community, often for so little in financial compensation. So I think it does make sense to ensure we seek livable wages for artists and cultural workers. And once again, I really thank you for moving this motion forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. So there's, Councillor Lowe, we've let the delegation go. You have questions for staff? Okay, so we're going to move to questions for staff. Councillor Lowe, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. The intent of the motion is good, and my only question, and I guess for staff who are going to put this together as part of the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan, I believe, will this also include information about funding available to artists and cultural workers from other levels of government as well? Because this to me is income redistribution, and because we have a regressive model of revenue in property taxes, this is better handled by the upper levels of government, if I may word it that way. I don't see a problem with us supplementing it where it's needed, but I just want to know if that information will also be available in what the councillor is requesting here.
Chair, thank you for the question. First of all, the scope of this is that, and staff wholeheartedly support the motion. We are working on a new cultural plan for the city that'll replace the plan that we had previously, the council approved previously. And so the scope of this is very much municipal in terms of our work, but it doesn't preclude us from including in the policy recommendations in terms of facilitating, advocating for other levels of government to also fill in these pieces. The main focus for us will certainly be on how the municipality can structure what it does for culture, the very direct interventions, be that in terms of how we fund culture, who participates in the funding process and the allocation, and we have a jury system that very much has involved peers in assessing culture and awarding those things, but also things like public art commissions and availability of studio space and the terms under which those, so there's a whole kind of gamut of things that our cultural policy will look at. And at the same time, in parallel, we are also working on a cultural funding policy to renew that. And again, we will apply that same lens to the funding part of our work to make sure that we have a comprehensive approach to this.
Okay, thanks very much.
Councillor Troster.
Thank you. Yeah, and I just wanted to emphasize that we're discussing this now at Community Services Committee in the context of funding for culture workers. But as I mentioned, you know, the displacement of the arts community is something we will be talking about at Planning Committee. I mean, it really cuts across all the policy work we do as a city, and certainly within the context of potential business conversions from office space. I know I've been raising the issue that in situations where we might be gifted federal buildings that are not suitable for conversion into residential, they might be suitable for conversion into studio space or into space for nonprofits. So just trying to keep that at the, you know, at the top of our minds when we're thinking about adaptive reuse in our city, because a lot of arts organizations are losing space due to redevelopment in the city. So if there's an opportunity to creatively convert space to help create more of an arts hub in the city, I think that would be really welcome, or certainly that's what I'm hearing from the community.
Thank you, Councillor Troster. Councillor DeRoche.
Thanks, Chair. I seem to recall a debate not too long ago at council where we had, there was a motion, I think, put forward, or an amendment put forward that we would try and channel, you know, the funding that we do spend on art to local artists versus artists from other parts of the country, and respecting that, you know, Ottawa tax dollars are going to Ottawa artists. So to question Mr. Chenier, what's our current policy in terms of some of the arts programs we have, in terms of the funding going on a more broad basis rather than focused on, you know, some of the people or the person we heard today? Thanks.
Chair, if I'm recalling the line of questioning that was held, it wasn't specifically to cultural funding, which for the most part, most of our criteria for eligibility for cultural funding from the city requires the groups to be locally based, so there's no issue there. The specific line of inquiry was around public art commissioning and whether we could keep the call for public art local. And the response there was that, and legal provided some background to this, I believe, is that that we could not, that, and for legal reasons in terms of laws relating to competition, but also that some of the art commissioning that we had, take the LRT art commissions, for example, or the Atasoke, some of the projects, and there are so many of them, exceed the ability of the local market to be able to supply grand scale public art type of thing. And so in terms of funding, there's no issue there. Primarily, only Ottawa groups qualify, and the money stays local and funds local initiatives. For public art commissioning, we do, in some cases, have national competitions to attract artists that are able to take the scale and creative visions that are often beyond what the local inventory of public artists can provide.
Thank you for the answer. To me, the testimony and I think the case today, at least for me, outlined the need to kind of keep things local as part of our program review or the program assessment that you're doing. So we'll see what you come back with, Mr. Chenier, as part of kind of the overall framework. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor. Seeing that there's no other questions, is this item carried? Carried. We haven't received any notices of motion. We do have inquiries. 10.1, Councillor Troster, do you want to read your inquiry?
Sure. Okay. So the city in contract services with many organizations, with religious organizations or affiliations. To some degree, this is inevitable as the origins of social services are inextricably tied to community work by religious institutions, and many religious institutions are still major landowners. However, it's important to provide equitable and barrier-free services, that all city services be free from religious principles or bias. To that end, could staff provide the following information? What is the city's policy on entering into agreements with religiously affiliated service providers? How many organizations with active service contracts or development files in the City of Ottawa are faith-based? How does the city ensure that existing city service standards are met by these service providers? And are there any exemptions to these standards, either by waiving a requirement, a grandfathered agreement, or other? And I'm simply bringing these forward because we've had a lot of questions in our office about the accessibility of city services. There's enormously good work being done by churches, synagogues, and mosques. But I've had some questions specifically within the 2S LGBTQ community about what guidelines any organization contracted by the city need to follow to ensure that we're meeting our human rights standards. So I have no doubt that we probably have good guardrails around these kinds of things, but I just wanted to get a sense of what those were. And I just want to thank all the organizations that are doing this work in our community because it is super important. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Troster. We also have an inquiry from Councillor King.
Thank you, Chair. This inquiry regards providing the committee more information about the future framework for the cultural policy and the cultural funding policy that will be taking place. And I think it's a great tie-in to the motion that was just approved that Councillor Troster brought to committee. During the 2022 budget deliberations, delegations attended the Community and Protective Services Committee requesting an update on a new cultural plan, including financial support for development. The city's 2022 budget did not include any financial support dedicated to a new cultural plan, which was considered an essential step towards resilience and recovery for the sector after the impacts of COVID-19. The request for a plan includes an outcome report on the renewed action plan for arts, heritage, and culture 2013-2018, which has still not been made public. What is the timeline for releasing a report on the renewed action plan for arts, heritage, and culture 2013-2018? What outstanding items remain for the renewed action plan for arts, heritage, and culture 2013-2018? Will these outstanding items and new areas of interest be included in a new cultural plan for the city? What is the timeline for creation of a new cultural plan for the city? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor King. There's no further inquiries at this point and no other business. Do we have adjournment, folks?
Adjourned.
Adjourned? Carried? Have a good rest of your day. It's supposed to be beautiful weather. I hope you all enjoy it.